bills. The good news is they all sold. The good news is the interest rate was only about 1 1/3%. The bad news is that the interest rate will not stay low as we sell more and more of these. And the more we explode this debt with what we're doing right now, not just what we've been doing for the past many years on our entitlement spending, but what we're doing right now with the various stimulus bills and the vast budget projections that are coming out of the White House, we're going to be selling debt on the marketplace that will compete with the private sector. How are we ever going to get the private sector to recover if we're driving interest rates up because our Treasury bills now are not worth as much as they were? Other people don't see them as safe as they once did.
Not as secure.
Right now we've got a willing group of buyers out there, so that's the good news. But the thing is, we don't know how long that's going to continue, and when does the inflationary pressure kick in, so that you didn't lose in the stock market last fall, you will see eroded or decay through inflationary pressure.
Let me ask you this.
Sure.
In his first address to both chambers of Congress in February, President Obama said, quote, "I'm proud that we passed the recovery plan free of earmarks, and I want to pass a budget next year that ensures that each dollar we spend reflects only our most important national priorities." Now, he did this knowing that on the horizon were 9,000 earmarks in the current $410 billion legislation that recently stalled in the Senate. You guys passed it, but it stalled in the Senate.
I voted against it just for
I
the
know
record.
you did.
I
know you did.
I want your listeners to know that.
But what did you think when you heard him say those words, realizing that he was fully aware of the fact that on the horizon was a bill rife with earmarks, the very thing that he said was not a part of the stimulus package and that he in good faith was not going to be a part of in the future?
Well, that's the sort of poetic license we take up here all the time. And in his defense, he did say that that was last year's business. And that's the omnibus bill that's sitting over in the Senate right now. Those are all the appropriation
but
bills.
if he signs it, it becomes this year's legislation.
Yeah,
so there's a contrast with no difference as far as I see it. Okay, not a lot of time, so let me move on very, very quickly here. I want to know.
You're right. I mean, on the face of it's hypocritical, and we should do a better job than that. And that was, of course, Senator McCain talking about let's get the earmarks out of this bill and keep the president true to his word. At least put that and the stimulus bill side by side and take out those things that are duplicative that we've already passed in the stimulus bill that were also included in the omnibus bill. We didn't even do that.
Didn't have to do that. Now for the latest battle over the fairness doctrine and its backup agenda called localism. What we have essentially with the fairness doctrine is an FCC regulation that used to make it incumbent upon radio stations to air both sides of any given issue. A lot of Republicans were concerned about this because in the old days it was used or is seen to have been used as an easy tool for those who wish to put forward bad faith complaints of violation. As a matter of fact, a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce under Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, once said, "Oh yeah, we used the fairness doctrine to intimidate right-wingers, and we figured if we did it enough, it would shut them up and make them go away." So we know that it was once used. Well, it went up to the Senate. It failed 87-11. But now you've got Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois saying, we want this other amendment in there concerning diversity. And I'm looking at it here. The Senate voted down the fairness. Oh, yeah. He said that he wants to go ahead, and what's the exact wording here? Forgive me. He wants the FCC, quote, to encourage and promote diversity in communication, media ownership, and to ensure that the broadcast station licenses are used in the public interest. My question to you is this. Do you think that this is just another path to manipulating talk radio?
Well, clearly it's a thinly veiled attempt. And that concept came out of the 1930s and 40s when there was not nearly the available, there was a fairly defined amount of spectrum that was available for public broadcast. But it makes no sense. I don't know, what do I have, 3,000 channels on my television at home? I have no earthly capacity to watch all of those, so I watch what I want.
Well,
if I don't like what I
people crazy. All this is attributable to spectrum scarcity, and that just doesn't seem to exist anymore. But it doesn't seem to deter these folks from still trying to pursue it. My
well, it's the ideological issue that they're pursuing.
Will you be able to stop it? Obviously, the fairness doctrine, that's a non-starter now. But what about localism as an alternate path?
Well,
diversity.
The sad political reality is that if on the House side, no, we can't stop a thing. It would require the concern or the attention of conservative Democrats to stand up with us and say, no, we're not going to do that. Now, I suspect that would happen. I think there probably are 30 or 40 Democrats who would be concerned enough about what their districts would be telling them about this. Senate right now, they don't have the 60 votes to just slam it through, then the bigger concern is, do they do something funny like put it on budget reconciliation where they only have to get 50 votes? And that's probably a greater concern. I don't think the American people will stand for it. I mean, it's people see through this. If it is just simply to control the ideology, you can't make the spectrum argument any longer. There's too much availability of things out there.
The spectrum scarcity argument just doesn't work.
It doesn't.
Matter of fact, I think that came up in a Supreme Court ruling in 1984, FCC versus League of Women Voters. They said if this, if we find that with these additional outlets this becomes more repressive than promoting, then forget about it. So
you guys
it looks as if it's coming to it.
You guys are equal time to NPR. So right now, as far as I'm concerned, the balance is perhaps not even, but the balance at least exists if you want to seek it out.
Well, everybody seems to have an equal chance to rise in the business. That's very, very different than saying, the government is obligated to give everyone equal results regardless of disparate performances rendered. So hopefully they'll see the clarity. Let me ask you this, because we have a number of questions just in from our folks emailing us online, some through Twitter, others through other places. We hear from Chris at gonzogeek.com. He says, how would you solve the economic current crisis? How would this solution be implemented? It sounds like a pretty big one, but can you truncate something for me? How would you, if you were president, how would you solve the current economic crisis?
Well, the key is getting the dollars back into the hands of people who are actually produce, and
tax cuts.
If in your parlance, that would be how you would phrase it. I think we've seen this before. We saw it with Kennedy. We saw it with Reagan. We saw it with Bush in 2003. You want the economy to hum. You help the people who actually make it work in the first place, and that would be the place I would start. Now, I'm not going to say that
there is this problem with the Democrats. You would think that every time, it's true, with Kennedy, Reagan, everyone who's ever done this, we've always found that with tax cuts, there's an increase in tax revenue. So it would seem to naturally follow that those who want more dollars for their favorite social spending programs would want to use the recipe that would bring them more dollars.
I would think so as well. Now, you did ask whether there's anything reasonable in the stimulus package. The one thing that the argument that you can make is the spending on infrastructure. That may be reasonable, and I use the type of logic that I had when I was in running a medical practice, essentially a small business. If I had to go out and borrow for operational expenses, I'm in deep trouble. If I'm going out to borrow, I hope it's for capital expansion, to buy new pieces of equipment, something that's going to help me, in fact, generate more revenue. So on the infrastructure expenses, perhaps therein is you can make a case for that. But two, you got to figure people who've lost their jobs at an investment bank in Wall Street are not likely to be the people who will be hired on a crew building a bridge project.
Real quick question, Billy, Fort Worth, Texas. He says, Texas has more miles of freight rail tracks than any other state, and Texas industry is very dependent on rail to move products and people. And rail use, freight rail, commuter rail, high-speed rail will intensify as Texas population and global trade keep growing. However, our stressed freight rail network threatens to derail the Texas economy. Many of our rail lines were built over a century ago and need to be replaced, rerouted, or upgraded. Do you support the expansion of the rail lines in Texas? And if so, how do you think Texas can pay for the upgrades needed?
Well, there's a variety of things at your disposal, but most of the freight lines to which I think he's referring are actually privately owned by Burlington Northern Santa Fe, Union Pacific, and other concerns, and they are responsible for the maintenance. Now, they do receive some federal help for that. They will tell you not nearly enough, but they do receive some federal help for that. In Fort Worth, we've got a big project going on with trying to fix a bottleneck that exists just south of downtown Fort Worth. It's called Tower 55, and this is going to require an enormous expenditure to get these two rail lines untangled from each other. And part of the freight lines are, of course, privately owned, and there is some public input, public financing for that as well. I'm sure the rail companies will tell you not nearly enough. There are a number of projects going on in Fort Worth right now that will deal with that, and it's an ongoing issue to keep our infrastructure up to stuff.
All right, we're going to have to let it go there. Congressman Burgess, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Always great to be with you.
Wonderful to be with you. That's it for us, ALJ's Capitol Hill Updates, and look forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Alan Nathan.